Hey everybody, and welcome to my channel. I'm Sarah, and I'm here with some writing lessons. For now, I want to focus on writing advice that comes out of one specific book or one specific movie at a time. So that way you have a really specific way, a really specific text that you can go back to, read or watch, and you can see what I'm talking about, and you can use those details and those lessons to help your writing or just make you think about a book or a movie in a different way. So today I'm going to talk about These Broken Stars, which is a YA science fiction novel, and I'm going to give you 5 writing takeaways from that book. So first of all, this book has a slow burn romance. So if that's something that you're writing about in your own book, whether it's YA or adult, YA means young adult, or any type of book that has a romance, you can look to this book for a really good example of a slow burn romance. Because we have characters that meet in the very first chapter, and at first they kind of have this instant physical attraction, but then they dislike each other pretty quickly. And then they sort of learn over the course of the book to tolerate each other, then to rely on each other, to become friendly, and eventually to fall in love. So you kind of don't get the first kiss until after halfway through the book, and you don't get, spoiler alert, a love scene until about 3/4 of the way through the book. So this isn't a book where we have the couple right at the beginning and it's just a will they or won't they sort of question. Instead, we have two people who we know they're attracted to one another. We know there's sort of chemistry and tension, but we don't know how it's going to turn out. And so that's part of why we keep reading, because we're wondering, like, are they going to get together or are they not? Are they going to sort of overcome all the little hurdles they set for themselves or not? And so that's one of the reasons we keep reading. That's one of the questions that we're invested in with this book. Another thing to consider about this book is that, they crash land on a planet, and essentially most of the book is kind of a journey, right? Journey across the planet. It's a quest narrative. Sometimes a problem you might run into if your book is set up this way, where two characters around the beginning of the novel go on some sort of quest, or they have to travel across a planet or travel from point A to point B, that what you might notice is that things kind of get a little dull or boring about halfway through, or however much through, even 1/3 of the way through, because essentially they're just kind of like, they're just going, they're just walking, they're going through the forest or the mountains or in a tunnel or whatever. And even if you throw stuff at them, even if they get attacked by a monster, which I'm guilty of that all the time, by the way, that even when you throw obstacles in their path, when they have that just one same goal, we're just trying to get here, it can be a little boring, or the tension can kind of run out at a certain extent. So what These Broken Stars does that's really interesting is that first, their goal is, once they land, Tarver and Lilac, is we've got to get to the crash site, the main crash site. If only we can get to the main crash site, we will be rescued. And that's kind of their guiding principle right from the beginning once they crash. That's only like a couple chapters in, that's not much of a spoiler. They say we've got to get to the main crash site because that's the only place that they're not going to be able to spot us from where we are, so we've got to travel there. But if the entire book was just them getting to the crash site, we would probably lose some steam, lose some interest. Even if they get attacked along the way, even if they fight along the way, it's still going to get boring. So instead, what they end up doing is, it's not just all we've got to do is get to the crash site. It actually becomes, oh, now we're at the crash site and we're not saved. What are we going to do now? And so they figure out the new goal, the new destination is, we've got to get to this shed that's beyond, this outpost shed that's even further away from the crash site. So what the authors do in These Broken Stars is that they keep the goalpost shifting, right? So they start us off by thinking, if only we can get to the crash site, we'll be safe. Got it, right? but then once they get to the crash site, they have to go somewhere else. So if you have your characters go on a journey, whether it's across the planet or across town or whatever, hopefully the goal that they have at the very beginning is not the same goal as at the end. And what you can do is try to change the goal part of the way through, change the destination because of new information that they come across or new experiences they have. And so that's something that could apply to just any sort of goal. It doesn't have to be like a across the planet journey. So that's number 2. The third writing lesson or writing takeaway from this book is that the authors the text raises questions consistently. Is anyone else alive from the crash? What's up with this planet? And then it becomes, what is Lilac seeing and hearing? What's going on? Why is she crazy? Is Tarver crazy? As the book progresses, if one question is answered, at least 1 or 2 more are raised. And so that's something you can do in your own book. When you've answered one question, ask another one, right? And you can keep the novel suspenseful by continually coming up with new questions. If your characters don't have your characters solve all the questions, because then there's kind of nothing to look forward to. So instead, if you raise a question and you answer it, raise some more and keep us going. And that's something I think These Broken Stars does really well. So 4th writing lesson or 4th tip that I think that These Broken Stars does really well, the book was different than I expected at first, because when I picked it up, I was kind of expecting it's a YA sci-fi romance. It's just going to, I don't know, be a lot of kissing or space or whatever. But actually most of the book takes place on a very Earth-like sort of planet, and it's essentially a survival story or a quest sort of story. And I thought that was really interesting in that the story was very grounded in the physical world. So the 4th tip is that is one thing that you could look at this book and read this book and gain from it is if you have a problem with white room syndrome, which is when you just have like 2 talking heads and they're just like, and there's kind of you don't know where you are or what's going on. All you know is that 2 people are talking. And maybe we're in a room and it has white walls and that's it. So if you look at this book, you're really grounded in the physical setting. You know what the characters are feeling physically, like how hard is the ground? What does the tree bark feel like? What does the dress feel like? And you know what things taste like. You know what things smell like. You know what everything looks like. And so scene by scene is very grounded in the physical world. And even though we have 2 different points of view in the book, I think both of them are really grounded physically. And so something you might consider is to look at this book, and lots of other books do this well too, is how can I use more physical details or the right physical details to really anchor my reader's experience so that they don't feel like they're just kind of floating around and they have to picture everything for themselves. Because come on, your reader doesn't want to picture everything for themselves. They'll get tired, believe me. The 5th and last lesson that you can take away from These Broken Stars is, and this is a sort of structural conceit that the author uses that's really interesting, and it's the use of a frame narrative. What the authors do with These Broken Stars is that before every chapter, you get a tiny piece that appears to be from an interview that Tarver is having in the future after they've already been rescued. And that's not, or he's been rescued. We don't know that for sure, right? In these little interview segments that are sprinkled throughout the book, every other chapter, we just get little dialogue fragments of the interviewer and Tarver going back and forth, and he's kind of almost like dueling with the interviewer in dialogue. And what that does is that it increases the tension throughout, because I mean, you could argue that in some way, doesn't it deflate tension because we know they're going to get rescued, or we know Tarver's going to make it out, so then what's the point? Because that mystery is gone. Well, okay, so what you might do by taking away that question or taking away that mystery is that you add suspense of a different kind. So instead of the question of will they get off this planet, or will Tarver get off this planet? It's when, how, what are they going to go through before then, right? So there's still plenty of unknowns that we have up to that point, but also those little scenes that are scattered throughout the novel, the frame narrative, the whole time we keep thinking like this interviewer is being antagonistic with Tarver. He keeps accusing Tarver of things. He keeps questioning him about the veracity of what he's saying, and we're kind of almost getting defensive on Tarver's behalf. And that makes us kind of read all of what we're seeing differently. And that's part of what you get by using a frame narrative, is that when the story that you're telling is not the only bit of the story, when we're having another story around it that helps us to view it, we're kind of recontextualizing everything through the lens of that outside story. And so the story of Tarver being interviewed kind of lets us feel like a little more dread about what's going to happen, because it doesn't seem like everything's going to be completely happily ever after by those snippets. And we get those from like, you know, page 2 or whatever. We get them really early on. So they're kind of increasing our unease throughout the story. And that's something that you could do if you wanted to experiment with a frame narrative. Whether you go, you know, have a Frankenstein style narrative where you have like one narrator telling the story and then another character telling the main story, or like These Broken Stars does it, where we just get snippets of like material that's from kind of a later time or a different media that's sort of sprinkled throughout to mix things up, add a little tension, let us think a little more differently about the story. Right, so that's it. Those are my 5 writing lessons or writing tips, writing takeaways based on These Broken Stars. And if you've read the book and you liked it or hated it or got something else from it, let me know in the comments down below. If you've seen any of these particular lessons in other books, then also share that with me in the comments. I'd love to see where you could also get these tips. And if you like this content and you want more like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Sarah, and I'll see you guys next time.